Story 1. The Motion Light. It was 3:42 a.m. when the backyard motion light turned on. That alone wouldn't have bothered me normally. The light had been triggered before by stray cats, raccoons, and sometimes even wind pushing branches too close to the sensor. But that night, something felt wrong. Maybe it was because I woke up at the exact moment the light flicked on, like my body sensed something before my mind could. The pale yellow glow spilled through the narrow gap in my curtains and stretched across my bedroom wall. I stared at it for a few seconds from my bed, half awake, half confused. Then I checked my phone. 3:42 a.m. The light stayed on. Usually it shut off after 20 seconds. 30 seconds passed. Still on. A minute passed. Still on. Which meant something was still moving back there. Or worse, something was standing still close enough to keep triggering the sensor. I slowly sat up in bed, my eyes fixed on the glowing rectangle of light on the wall. Outside my house wasn't much around. My property backed up into a stretch of woods that ran for miles. No streetlights, no neighbors close enough to wander over accidentally. If someone was in my backyard at nearly 4 in the morning, they were there on purpose. I told myself it was an animal. Still, I got out of bed and walked quietly toward the window. The wooden floor creaked beneath my feet, the sound feeling strangely loud in the silent house. When I reached the curtain, I hesitated. I don't know why. Looking outside shouldn't have been scary, but something in my gut told me I wasn't going to like what I saw. Slowly, I pulled the curtain aside. The backyard was bathed in yellow light from the motion lamp mounted above the back door. The grass looked normal. The fence stood still. The trees beyond it swayed slightly in the breeze. Empty. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension leave my chest. Probably a raccoon. I was about to close the curtain when the light suddenly shut off. The yard plunged into darkness. For a moment, I saw nothing but shadows. Then my eyes adjusted. And that's when I noticed the figure near the fence. At first, it looked like part of the trees, but then it moved slightly. Someone was standing there, perfectly still, watching the house. A chill ran down my spine. I leaned closer to the window, trying to make out details. The person was tall, wearing something dark, maybe a hoodie, but they weren't walking away. They weren't climbing the fence. They were just standing there, facing the house, facing my window, watching. My hands began to shake. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, zooming toward the fence. The image was grainy and dark, but the figure was clearly human. Their head was slightly tilted, like they were studying the house. I stood there watching them for several minutes. They didn't move, not even once. The longer they stood there, the more uneasy I felt. It wasn't normal behavior. Even someone trespassing would usually run if they saw a light turn on inside the house. But this person didn't run. They didn't even turn away. Finally, I stepped back from the window and dialed the police. While the phone rang, I glanced outside again. The figure was closer now. Much closer. They had moved halfway across the yard, but I hadn't seen them walk. I felt my stomach twist. How long had they been moving when I wasn't looking? The dispatcher answered. I explained that someone was in my backyard. She told me officers were on the way and to stay inside. When I looked outside again, the figure was gone. For a moment I felt relief. Maybe they ran when they heard me talking. Then the motion light snapped on again, right outside the back door. I slowly raised the phone and zoomed the camera toward the porch. My heart nearly stopped. The hooded figure was standing inches from the door. Their face was hidden in shadow, but their head was slightly tilted upward, looking directly toward the house, looking toward my window. Then they raised their arm and pointed something toward the house. A phone. They were recording, standing silently in my backyard at almost 4 in the morning, filming my house. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers searched the yard with flashlights. They checked the woods, the fence line, everything. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no signs anyone had been there.
One officer even checked the motion light camera that recorded whenever the sensor activated. The footage made my blood run cold. At 3:42 a.m., the video showed someone walking slowly across the backyard, toward the house. The person looked exactly like me. Same height, same clothes, same face. The footage ended with that version of me standing at the back door, smiling into the camera. But the smile looked wrong. Too wide, too still. The officer looked at me and asked quietly, "Sir, were you outside tonight?" I shook my head. No. Later that day, I watched the footage again. Something about it bothered me. Then I noticed the detail that made my stomach drop. The reflection in the back door glass showed the camera and the person holding it. A second figure, standing behind the one that looked like me, recording everything.
Story 2. The Man Living Under the Deck. The scratching started 3 nights after we moved into the house. It was faint at first, just a soft, dragging noise somewhere outside in the backyard, like something brushing slowly against wood. At first, I didn't even notice it. I thought it was the house settling or branches rubbing against the deck when the wind picked up. But the 3rd night, I heard it clearly. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. It was coming from directly beneath the deck. I remember lying in bed beside my wife, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening carefully. The sound repeated every few seconds. Not random, not like an animal digging. It sounded careful, intentional. I nudged my wife and whispered, "Do you hear that?" She listened for a moment, then shrugged. Probably raccoons. That made sense. The house backed up to a wooded area. Wildlife wandering into the yard wasn't unusual. Still, the scratching didn't sound like claws. It sounded like fingernails. The next morning, I went outside to check. The deck was old but sturdy, built about 2 feet off the ground with wooden lattice covering the sides. I crouched down near one of the openings and looked underneath. Nothing, just dirt, old leaves, and a few spider webs. But something caught my eye. Near the center of the space was a flattened patch of dirt, like something, or someone, had been lying there. I frowned, but told myself it was probably an animal nest. That night the scratching came back, only louder. Scratch, scratch, pause, then a slow dragging noise, like something shifting its weight across the ground. I got up and walked to the back door, turning on the porch light. The scratching stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse. I stood there staring into the darkness beneath the deck, feeling like something down there was staring back. Eventually I went back to bed, but the noise returned again the following night and the night after that, always around the same time, around 2 or 3 a.m., and always stopping the moment we turned on a light. After a week of this, curiosity finally got the better of me. One afternoon, while my wife was at work, I grabbed a flashlight and crawled closer to the deck. The beam cut through the shadows underneath. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed something tucked against the far side of the foundation. A blanket, folded neatly. My stomach tightened. Animals don't fold blankets. I crouched lower and shined the light deeper under the deck. There were more things: a backpack, several empty water bottles, food wrappers, a small flashlight. Someone had been living under our deck. My hands started shaking as I backed away. I immediately called my wife. She came home early and we contacted the police. 2 officers arrived about an hour later. They circled the deck with flashlights, then lifted part of the lattice and crawled underneath. After several minutes, they came back out. "There's nothing under there," one of them said. I stared at him. "What do you mean, nothing? There was a blanket, a backpack." The officer shook his head. "Sir, there's nothing but dirt." They showed me with their flashlight. The space was completely empty. No blanket, no backpack, no trash. Nothing. It was like everything I saw had disappeared. The officers suggested maybe I imagined it, or maybe someone had already come back and removed their things, but something about that explanation didn't feel right. For the next few nights, the yard stayed quiet. No scratching, no noises, just silence. Then one night, around 3:17 a.m., I woke up to breathing. Not outside, not distant, right beneath the floor. Slow, heavy breathing. I sat upright in bed, my heart pounding. "Do you hear that?" I whispered to my wife. She nodded slowly. The breathing continued, deep inhaling, slow exhaling, like someone lying directly under our bedroom floorboards, listening, waiting. I got out of bed and walked quietly toward the window. The backyard looked normal, but the breathing kept coming from beneath the deck. Then I heard something else, a soft thump, followed by a slow scraping sound, like someone dragging their body across the ground. I ran downstairs and locked the back door. My wife called the police again. While we waited, I checked the security camera we had installed earlier that week. It had motion detection. Sure enough, it recorded something at 3:17 a.m. I opened the clip. The footage showed the backyard in grainy night vision. The deck sat motionless for several seconds. Then something moved. A pale hand slowly reached out from the darkness underneath. The fingers curled around the wooden beam. Then a man crawled out. He looked thin, too thin. His clothes were filthy and torn. His hair hung in tangled clumps across his face. He moved slowly, like his body hurt. But what he did next made my blood run cold. He stood up and walked straight to the back door. He pressed his ear against it, listening. He stayed like that for nearly 10 minutes, completely still. Then he stepped back and looked directly at the camera. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and he smiled. The smile was wrong, not happy, not friendly, just stretched too wide across his face. Then he slowly crouched down and crawled back under the deck. The police arrived minutes later. They surrounded the backyard and searched underneath the deck again. But once again, there was nothing there. No man, no blanket, no backpack, no tunnel. Just dirt. The officers even removed several boards from the deck to check deeper underneath. The space wasn't even big enough for a person to lie flat, which made the video impossible. But the story didn't end there, because 3 nights later, the scratching came back. Only this time, it wasn't coming from under the deck. It was coming from inside the walls of the house, right behind our bedroom. Scratch, pause, scratch. And every time we turned on the lights, it stopped, like something inside the house didn't want to be seen. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is silent, I still hear breathing, not outside, not under the deck, but directly behind the bedroom wall, listening, waiting, like it finally found a way inside.
Story 3. The Backyard Camera That Recorded Tomorrow. It was 2:43 a.m. when the backyard camera recorded something that hadn't happened yet. I know how that sounds. If I heard someone say that, I'd assume they were exaggerating or misreading timestamps. I work in IT, and I've dealt with enough faulty cameras and corrupted recordings to know technology can glitch in strange ways. But this wasn't a glitch. because the footage showed something that would happen the next night, exactly the same way. It started after we installed a new security system around the house. My wife had been nervous ever since we moved in. Our property backed up to a huge wooded area, and the house sat almost half a mile from the nearest neighbor. During the day, it was peaceful. At night, it felt like the woods were watching. So we installed 4 cameras, one in the front yard, one in the hallway, one in the driveway, and one facing the backyard. The backyard camera covered everything: the deck, the shed, the fence, and part of the tree line beyond it. For the first few nights, nothing happened, just the occasional raccoon or deer passing through. Then, on the 4th night, the motion alert woke me up. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Motion detected, backyard camera. I checked the time, 2:43 a.m. Half asleep, I opened the camera feed. The backyard looked empty. The deck sat motionless under the pale night vision glow. The trees beyond the fence swayed gently in the wind. Nothing unusual. Still, the motion alert had triggered, so I opened the recorded clip. The video started normally. Empty yard. Silent. Then the camera shifted slightly, adjusting focus, and something appeared near the fence. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but shadows don't move. A person stepped slowly into view from the tree line. My stomach dropped. Even through the grainy night vision, I recognized the figure immediately. It was me. Same height, same hair, same clothes. I froze. The version of me in the video stood near the fence for several seconds, staring at the house. Then it began walking across the yard, slowly, purposefully, toward the back door. I glanced down at myself. I was still in bed, my wife asleep beside me. I looked back at the screen. The version of me in the video had reached the deck. Then it stopped and turned toward the camera. The face was definitely mine, but the expression was wrong. The smile stretched unnaturally wide, like someone who had studied how humans smile but didn't quite understand it. The clip ended with the figure walking up to the back door. Then the video cut off. I sat there staring at the screen for several minutes. There had to be a logical explanation. Someone who looked like me? Maybe a reflection glitch? Maybe the system had merged 2 clips. But deep down, none of those explanations felt right. The next morning, I checked the footage again. Same thing, same timestamp, 2:43 a.m. But something about it bothered me more now. The version of me in the video was wearing a gray hoodie, the same hoodie I had worn the day before, except that hoodie was currently hanging in my closet, and I definitely hadn't gone outside during the night. I checked the rest of the camera footage. The hallway camera never showed me leaving the bedroom. The front door never opened. Nothing. That should have been the end of it. But the next night, it got worse. At exactly 2:43 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Motion detected, backyard camera. My chest tightened. Slowly, I opened the camera feed. Empty yard, just like before. Then I opened the recording. The video began exactly the same way as the previous night. Empty backyard, silent trees. Then the same figure stepped out from the woods. Again. It was me. Same clothes, same slow walk across the yard, same unnatural smile. But this time the video continued longer. The figure reached the back door and slowly opened it. My heart slammed against my ribs because at that exact moment I heard the sound downstairs, the back door opening. I turned toward my wife. She was still asleep. The hallway outside our bedroom creaked. Slow steps, heavy, dragging, moving toward the stairs. I grabbed my phone and looked back at the recording. The version of me in the video had entered the house, but the hallway camera hadn't recorded anyone, which meant whatever came inside wasn't visible to the other cameras. The steps stopped outside our bedroom door.
Silence filled the hallway. I held my breath. Then the doorknob slowly turned, but the door didn't open. It just rattled slightly, like someone testing it. After a few seconds, the knob stopped moving. The steps slowly retreated down the hallway, back toward the stairs. Then, silence. I waited nearly an hour before opening the door. The hallway was empty. The back door downstairs was locked, just like we left it. But the backyard camera recorded something else. At 3:12 a.m., the video showed the back door opening again, and the figure that looked like me stepping back outside. But this time, it didn't walk toward the woods. Instead, it stopped in the middle of the yard, turned toward the camera, and slowly raised its hand, pointing directly at the lens, at the viewer. Then the clip ended. The next morning, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The camera timestamps had changed. The new recording from last night was labeled 2:43 a.m. tomorrow. At first, I thought it was a software error, but when I played the video, it showed the backyard again, empty, until something stepped into frame, not from the woods, from the house. The back door opened, and the thing that looked like me walked outside. But this time, it wasn't alone. Something taller followed behind it, thin, bent, its limbs too long, its head tilted sideways. The thing that looked like me pointed toward the camera again, then toward the house, like it was giving directions, and the tall thing slowly began walking toward the door, toward the house, toward the room where we were sleeping. The timestamp on the video says it will happen tomorrow night at 2:43 a.m. And right now, it's 2:38. 5 minutes left. The motion alert hasn't gone off yet, but I can already hear something moving outside in the backyard, and it sounds like 2 sets of footsteps.
Story 4. The neighbor who watched my backyard. The first time I noticed him, he was standing perfectly still at the edge of his yard. It was late evening, maybe around 7:30 p.m. The sun had already dipped below the trees behind the houses, and the sky was fading into that deep blue color right before night. I had just moved into the house a week earlier, and I was standing on my back porch with a cup of coffee, trying to get used to the quiet. That's when I saw him, my neighbor, standing near the fence that separated our backyards, just watching. At first, I thought he was looking at something else, maybe the woods behind my property or the birds that sometimes landed on the fence. But after a few seconds, it became obvious. He was staring directly at my backyard. Not moving, not blinking, just staring. I raised my hand in an awkward wave. He didn't respond, didn't wave back, didn't even nod. He just stood there, eyes fixed on my yard like he was studying it. Eventually, I shrugged it off and went back inside. Some people are just weird. But the next night, he was there again. Same spot, same posture, standing near the fence, watching my backyard. This time it was darker, around 10 p.m. The porch light illuminated part of the yard, but the rest was swallowed by shadow. And there he was, perfectly still, facing my house, watching. I stepped outside and called out, "Hey!" No response. He didn't move, didn't react, just stared. I felt a strange chill crawl up my spine. Eventually, he turned slowly and walked back toward his house. The movement was slow and stiff, like someone who wasn't used to walking. Over the next week, I saw him almost every night, always around the same time, always standing at the fence, always staring into my backyard. Never speaking, never acknowledging me. It got uncomfortable fast. One evening, I finally decided to introduce myself. I walked across the yard and approached the fence. "Hey," I said, "I just moved in next door." He was closer now, and I could see his face for the first time. He looked pale. Not sick pale, more like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in a long time.
His eyes were wide and slightly sunken, and his expression was blank. He stared past me into the yard. Not at me, at the yard. "You keep looking over here," I said awkwardly. "Everything okay?" For several seconds he didn't respond. Then, slowly, he spoke. His voice sounded dry, almost unused. "Your backyard." I frowned. "What about it?" He blinked slowly, then said something that made my stomach tighten. "You shouldn't stay there after midnight." I waited for him to explain. He didn't. "What happens after midnight?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just turned and walked back toward his house again. That night I locked my doors, not because I believed him, but because something about the way he said it felt wrong. For the next few days I kept an eye on the backyard. Nothing strange happened. No noises, no movement, just a normal, quiet yard. Eventually I stopped thinking about what he said, until one night I woke up suddenly. My bedroom clock read 12:17 a.m. At first I didn't know what woke me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Slow footsteps moving across the grass. My heart started pounding. I got out of bed and walked carefully to the window. The backyard was dimly lit by the motion light near the deck, and there it was, perfectly still, facing my house, watching. I couldn't see their face clearly, but the posture looked wrong. Their arms hung stiffly at their sides, their head tilted slightly, like they were listening. I grabbed my phone and zoomed the camera toward them, and that's when I realized something terrifying. The person in my yard wasn't my neighbor. It was me. Same height, same clothes, same face, standing silently in my backyard, watching my house. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. Then the figure slowly raised its arm and pointed toward the fence. I followed the direction of the finger, and that's when I saw my neighbor, standing exactly where he always stood, watching the yard, watching the thing that looked like me. Our eyes met for a moment, and he shook his head slowly, like he'd seen this before, like he knew exactly what was happening. Then he mouthed something across the darkness. 3 words. I couldn't hear them, but I could read his lips. "Don't go outside." The next morning, I walked over to his house. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Eventually, I called the police for a welfare check. When they forced the door open, the house was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no food, no personal belongings. It looked like no one had lived there for years, which made no sense, because I had seen him every night, standing by the fence, watching my backyard. Later that evening, I checked my security camera footage. The camera clearly showed someone standing in my yard at 12:17 a.m., but when I zoomed in on the fence, there was no neighbor there, no one standing by the fence, no one watching. The camera showed an empty yard, except for one thing, the figure standing in the middle of the grass that looked exactly like me, still staring at the house, waiting for something or someone to come outside.
Story 5. The hole that was digging toward my house. It started as a whisper, just a faint scratching in the far corner of the backyard, near the old oak tree that cast long shadows over the fence at night. At first, I assumed it was a dog digging, or maybe a raccoon looking for something. But the sound didn't stop. Night after night, it grew louder, sharper, deliberate. By the 3rd night, I could hear it even over the hum of my ceiling fan. The scratching was closer now, coming from the side of the yard near the fence, slow, dragging, careful, like someone or something was tunneling under the dirt. I told myself it was probably a stray animal, a raccoon, a dog, maybe a possum, anything to calm the tightening in my chest.
Then came the smell. A faint, damp, earthy smell that wasn't there during the day. It crept through the back door when I opened it for a glass of water. My stomach churned. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The yard was empty. The fence was still. The trees swayed gently in the night wind. Nothing unusual, but I could hear it, the scratching. It came from the far corner again, the same place every night. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself I was imagining things. I even installed a motion sensor light, hoping it would scare off any animals. It didn't. One night, around 2:56 a.m., I decided to confront it. I crept quietly across the yard, flashlight in hand, knees trembling. Every step felt louder than it should, every crack of grass beneath my feet like an alarm. When I reached the corner, the ground was different. Freshly disturbed, loose dirt piled up like someone or something had been digging for hours. I knelt down and shined my flashlight directly into the hole. It was deep, deeper than a raccoon or a dog could make in a single night. The edges were smooth, rounded, not clawed, not rough, but precise. I froze. Then I heard breathing, slow, wet, labored. I swore my heart stopped. The sound came from inside the hole, from beneath the ground. A cold sweat ran down my back. I tried to back away. My flashlight flickered. And then I saw it. 2 pale fingers slowly curling around the edge of the hole. The hand was thin, almost skeletal. Then a face emerged. It was humanoid, vaguely human, but wrong. The eyes were too large, black and unblinking. The skin was pale, stretched tight over the skull. And the mouth. Oh God, the mouth was wider than it should have been, stretched far beyond normal, curling almost into a grin. The thing tilted its head, staring directly at me. I couldn't look away. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Slowly, it retreated into the hole, disappearing beneath the dirt. I stumbled back across the yard, tripping over the sprinkler, heart hammering in my chest. I slammed the back door shut and locked it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the hole was gone, filled in, perfectly flat. Not a trace of disturbed earth remained. I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a nightmare, my imagination. But the scratching returned the next night, and it was closer. It wasn't coming from the far corner anymore. It was coming from under the fence, and it was moving toward the house. I placed my security camera pointing toward the fence. I needed proof. That night I couldn't sleep. Every shadow outside seemed alive. Every rustle of leaves made me jump. And then the motion alert went off. I grabbed my phone. The camera feed was grainy in night vision, but I could make out the hole. It had appeared again, as if the earth itself had opened up. And from it, the thing emerged. Not fully, just a head, a hand, but enough to make my blood run cold. It looked around, the camera caught every movement. The fingers flexed, the head turned, and then it started crawling, slowly, methodically, toward the house. I could see the dirt shift as it dragged itself across the ground. Its limbs moved in ways that shouldn't have been possible, bending like they weren't meant to bend. I backed away from the camera, heart hammering, breath shallow. It reached the back porch, its hand extended, touching the wooden steps. Then it paused, head tilted, staring up at the window above. And I swear it smiled. A grin that stretched impossibly wide, the kind of smile that should never exist on a human face. Then it disappeared. The next morning, I checked the yard. No hole, no dirt piles, nothing. Just my backyard, calm and quiet. I tried to rationalize it. Animal tracks? Maybe a stray dog? But there were no tracks, nothing. Every night since, the digging comes closer. Under the fence, under the deck, toward the foundation. Last night, I didn't hear the scratching from the corner. I heard it,
under my bedroom window, slow, deliberate, dragging, waiting, and I know if I sleep too long, it will reach me. Subscribe for more chilling tales.